After all the time, energy, and effort you put into getting items on your pantry shelf, are you leaving them vulnerable? In one of our past videos, when we were making our can rotators, we had somebody comment that it would be a shame to see all these beautiful canned goods end up destroyed because of an earthquake. And at the time, we had replied with, earthquakes aren't something that we generally have to worry about in our area in the northeast of the United States. But this past year has shown us that that isn't necessarily the case. Having experienced an earthquake that did shake things on the shelves in our house this past year, we've decided it's time to do a little protection preparation on our shelves. Now, we use these adjustable shelving units that you can pick up at your local hardware big box store, and we have decided that we need to make something that is going to protect our jars from falling off the shelf and ending up on the floor. So our first step is going to be to head out to our shed where we keep all of our extra pieces of wood, see what we have on hand and what we can use to make some protective braces to go along the edges of our shelves. Well, it's cold and windy, so I had to get bundled up to come outside, but we're in our yard/storage shed, and this is where all our bits, pieces, and parts of lumber and other things end up when we're working on different projects and have stuff left over and need a place to put it. So most of our long stuff, our trim and longer boards, are behind me up in the rafters. So I'm gonna go take a look and see what I can find, and I'll show you how this works out. Well, I found a partial bundle of 1x2 furring strips, and I think these are going to be perfect for what we're going to make. So I brought a tape measure in, and the next step is going to be to measure how long my pieces of board need to be. Now, this is where I have to make some decisions. I can cut the boards for individual shelves. This is actually 2 shelving units. So I could measure and cut for an individual. Or I can measure the entire length and have the board go the full length of the shelf, which is what I'm going to do. Now, the only downfall of that is if we decide to rearrange our shelves. But one nice thing is, if we do that, I can just cut that long board in half, add a couple more screws, and it's still good to go. So another thing that I want to measure are the ends of my shelves. And the reason I want to do that is it's great to have bumpers on the 2 sides, but I also want to make sure nothing's going to fall off the end of the shelf. Now, another reason why I'm going to go on the sides the entire length is it's also going to help hold my shelves together as well. So let me get those measurements and we'll get back out to the workshop to get our boards cut. I wrote down my measurements both for the ends and for the sides, so I ended up with 18 3/8 on the ends and 73 1/4 on the sides. So we're going to take the boards that I found, we're going to get those measured and marked, and then we can get them cut on the chop saw, and we'll be ready to take these back into the house. So now that I got all my sides and my ends cut, I'm going to take a piece of sandpaper and I'm just going to sand the ends and the edges just to make sure that I don't have any slivers that I'm going to catch on, and that these corners are softened just a little bit so that if somebody happens to bump into the edge of the shelf, they're not going to run into a problem. So let me get these all done, and then our next step is going to be getting them back in the house to mark for where our screws are going to go. If you've ever had to deal with these little plastic tags that they put on the end of wood, I just wanted to say I feel sorry. I hate these. Sometimes you can get them to come out fine. I use the little mini screwdrivers, and sometimes they don't come out. So let's see how we do with these, because I found something like that one. Steve, in one of his videos, made a tool, and he did this to help take the pressure off on propane tanks or other fuel tanks. So I found if I take this and I just slip that slot right over and I give it a turn, it just pops that right out. So luckily I had this sitting right at the shelf, and I can, let's see how it works with this one, too big to fit behind there. So let's use my little screwdriver again. Same problem. It just pops it out at the end. So I just slide this over and turn it. So I'll have to tell Steve the little tool he made now has a dual purpose. Steve and I talked about what is the best way to put these up in a way that is going to allow us to adjust them. Do we want them higher? Do we want them lower? Take them off if need be. Let's say I want to slide a whole box of jarred food onto the shelf. I can take these off if need be. If we rearrange the shelf height, we can move these to whatever is appropriate. And we came up with the idea of using some large-headed screws. Now, this is going to let us take advantage of the keyholes that are already built into the shelf, which will let us adjust the height of our bumpers, and it will allow us to take them off. We wanted to be able to do that easily. So we found some screws out in the workshop. The heads are small enough to fit through the top hole of the keyhole, but if I slide them down, the heads are too big to come out of the bottom part of the keyhole. Now these aren't really holding any weight unless we have a problem, but these are nice big beefy, oops, there goes that one, nice big beefy screws. So we're gonna pre-drill before we put those in, which means we're gonna have to mark the back of the board. So in order to know exactly where I want to pre-drill on this, I'm going to hold the board up. I'm going to bring it up to the keyholes that I'm looking at. And now I want my screw to be kind of centered on the board. So I'm looking at the back of the keyhole and I want to mark down towards the bottom so that I know exactly where it's going to be. I need to line this up to the end. I'm going to bring this down a little bit to get it about to the middle of the board. And then I can make my mark on the keyhole in the back on just where I want to put that screw in. I'm going to do the same on the other end, and I'm going to do the same for the boards that are going to go the long length of the shelf and get those pre-drilled, get the screws in, and then I'll show you how we put them in. I put a piece of masking tape onto the drill bit to mark my depth so I don't drill all the way through. We're going to get these drilled out, and then we're going to get the screws in, and then we'll be able to show you what it looks like on the shelf. Well, this one has the screws in on both ends. They're not quite in all the way, which is what we want so that it can slide in and out. So all I have to do is put the screw into the top of the keyhole, slide it down. This isn't going anywhere. If I want to adjust it or move it, I can just lift it up, take it off, move it up one if I've got bigger jars on the shelf. There we go. So this was an easy thing to do. I'm going to go finish them up, get the rest of them done on the shelves, and I'll show you what it looks like when they're all done. We have our braces on our shelves, or bumpers, as Steve likes to call them. And I think these came out pretty good. Now, you can paint these, stain these. You could use something fancy like molding if you wanted, or you could use a wider board if you wanted on these. For us, this worked out perfect as we were using something we already had. These screws worked great. We can adjust these at different heights if we need to. On a wide shelf, if we decided we wanted to put an extra brace in, we could. So we would have a bumper at the bottom and a bumper up higher if we're going to have things at a higher level on the shelf. If we decide to adjust where the shelves are, we can adjust these as well. So this worked out really well for us on this type of shelf. Now, if you have a different type of shelf that doesn't have the keyholes, you may use something, temporary would be bungee cords or rope or something like that. You may have to use your creativity to come up with something that's going to work on the shelves that you have. If you have wooden shelves, screwing something into those shelves is going to work out really well. But it all depends. Everything is going to be custom based on what you have. We wanted to share how we were helping to earthquake prep our shelves, now that that is something that isn't out of the question for us. Now, if you've liked this video and you think that this was a good idea, give us a thumbs up. Leave us a comment on what you've done to earthquake proof your shelves. Now, I'm sure you have some ideas on what it can be for around the jars, and we can deal with that maybe in another video if you'd like us to share some ideas for how to keep the jars from banging against each other. But until next time, everybody, take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye.